Hello and welcome back to Classic and Sports Car Centre near Malton. Today I'm going to talk about Alvis, and on this bright and blustery afternoon I've brought three vehicles out for a particular reason. Now the car that's the subject of the video is a 1964 Alvis TE21 Drophead Coupe, an extremely rare model of Alvis. There are, I think, only 88 of these left in the world. But I brought the other two cars out because both of these manufacturers, Alvis and Armstrong Siddeley, were both established in the same year, 1919, and they developed a reputation, a well-deserved reputation, for their engineering excellence and the longevity of their products. Now, this car, which dates from 1931, is worth about £40,000. The 14 horsepower Armstrong Siddeley's worth less than half that. And you might ask yourself, why? And that has to do not with necessarily with the engineering standard of the two vehicles, but with the popularity of Alvis and the way in which they've developed a fantastic following amongst the classic car fraternity. We were proud to be sponsors last year of the Alvis International Weekend at Elvington Airfield near York, and many Alvis owners have become good friends of ours. My background is very much Jaguar, but I've become more interested and a little bit more knowledgeable about Alvis in later years, and I've already taken this car for a test drive. I'm going to do it again in a few minutes, but there's something very special about driving one of these, and I'm going to explain what that is. So my plan is to quickly show you around it, point out any defects that it has cosmetically, and then take it out for a test drive. And I would stress that in our experience, and you know, we sell whatever it is, almost £10 million of classic cars a year, that's a unique car because you just don't get them where they've been 33 years with one owner and had the kind of history of maintenance that this has had without having to have a restoration. In other words, this car's never been bad enough to need restoration. I always like to look down the side of a vehicle, looking at the line of it, just to see if there are any ripples and indentations, but no, this is very good indeed. Panel wise, it's a cracking car. The bright work on the car is very good throughout. Bumpers, chrome bezels on the headlamps, the radiator grille itself is good. There are a couple of tiny pings, probably as a result of stone chips in its history, but you know, you wouldn't do anything with that. It's fine just as it is. So there's a line of little imperfections here where they normally have problems, which is in the lower section of the rear wing. This doesn't have any. I think this wing does need painting, at least because there is a crease, a small crease about 4 inches long here, and there are a few chips and marks. You might be able to see one here, right behind the aerial here. There are some chips around the headlamp. There's a little bit of reaction here and here. In my experience, this would be a result of shrinkage, movement underneath the paint from work that was maybe done many years ago. There was, for example, in the 1980s and early 90s, a lot of use of American high-build primers, and that shrinks and expands at a different rate to the surface of the paint, and so you know, I'm quite used to seeing things like that. There are a few of the marks here, little sort of cracks. Now, interestingly, that's not a place where cars corrode. That's simply a case of, you know, there's paint on it, there's been shrinkage, there's been movement, expansion and contraction, and that's the result. It's not bad, but it has to be mentioned. A few little chips here in front of the passenger door. This might not be easy to see on the video, but there is, just like on the other side, there's a very faint line of imperfection here, which is visible. There is another similar little crack here on the passenger door, and again, that will have been a historic repair. I would imagine at some point it's picked up a dent. That dent's been filled, and that's shrinkage. At first glance, it looks sort of 7 to 8 out of 10 in terms of paintwork presentation, but as I've shown, there are lots of detailed imperfections, and the way to deal with that, if you wanted to do, will be to flat it and repaint it. It doesn't require any areas of significant repair. It's simply, because it's been well kept up to over the years, it's simply a case of, if you want to get rid of those chips, marks and imperfections in paintwork, the easiest way to do that, to get an absolute consistent good finish and to have the kind of shine that the car has now, will be to give it a full repaint. And whether to do that or not really will be a decision for the new owner. And you might ask, well, why wouldn't you just do the paintwork now and then present it absolutely perfect? And the answer to that question is because then it wouldn't be as honest as it is. You know, if you've got a freshly repainted car, you've absolutely no idea what's underneath it. At least now you can see that this car's been in long-term ownership, it's been well kept up to, and the work that's needed is minor cosmetic. There's no serious surgery required. The interior, as you see, is just lovely. Original upholstery, it's had a new set of carpets, all the woodwork is super, headlining is nice and clean. It's a shame we can't do smelly vision because it smells gorgeous. That lovely old car smell of leather and wood and wool. So that's a lovely engine bay. Just one noticeable thing here, it's got a battery isolator switch under the bonnet. Nothing really much to comment on. It's got a lovely patina in here. So I'll put the old girls away and then we'll take the TE21 out for a test drive. So one of the wonderful things about the Alvis is that when you get up to 50 miles an hour, you can pop it into 5th gear, just under 2,000 RPM, and you're cruising like you would in a modern car. The suspension is not too firm, it's quite supple, but such is the strength of the chassis that you don't get scuttle shake. It feels so rigid, even though it's a car with an open top. And that's the attraction, because it's so comfortable. It's such an accomplished long-distance touring car. It really is fantastic. Brakes nice and squarely. Synchros are great. And here on a quite bumpy road is where you can really tell how rigid this chassis is. There's not a hint of scuttle shake on the car. Beautiful. And here we are in a quintessentially English gentleman's touring car in a quintessentially English village. So we're now up to operating temperature. Battery is showing a positive charge. 55 psi at 1600 RPM. Water temperature sitting steadily at 85 degrees, which is exactly where it should be. As a car to drive, I absolutely can't fault it. I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say that this is about as pleasant as classic car motoring ever gets. Stunningly beautiful Alvis Open Tourer, an idyllic summer's day. Now normally one of the things that I do on my test drives is I snag the car so that I can essentially give the workshops a list of what it might need in terms of preparation for the next owner. And I mean, I can't find anything. I can't find a single thing that needs doing. So I think with this one, instructions to the workshops would simply be service. You know, change the oil, filters, give it a decent service, because it just doesn't need anything else. At least then the new owner can be satisfied that he doesn't have to do anything, perhaps for the next year, depending upon the mileage that you do. And the gearbox is a joy. I talked a bit earlier on about those two companies that started in 1919, Alvis and Armstrong Siddeley, and of course the one big difference in those two, between those two manufacturers when it got to the 1950s and early 60s, and of course Armstrong Siddeley didn't last long into the 60s, is the styling of the cars. You know, I quite like the big sapphires and star sapphires, but they're not in this league really. I think that Graeber's involvement with Alvis in terms of body design and styling, that's the big difference, because these are so stylish. And in much the same way that Superleggera created that iconic Aston Martin DB shape, so Graeber's influence on these wonderful chassis created a car which is timeless, absolutely timeless. And in all honesty, I would rather drive this than pretty much anything else in terms of a large luxury open tourer. I can't think of anything that surpasses it. How smooth is that?